Gardeners. This week we are going to draw and paint castles. I know that in your regular classes with your kindergarten teachers, you're starting to talk about fairy tales. And so at this time, I love to do a project with you where we're going to draw castles and we're going to break it up into shapes. I'm going to draw it with you first. I'm going to outline it with a black crayon, and then I'm going to paint mine. Of course, when you're home, if you have those items, that would be great. Or you can always color it in with something different than paint, whatever you have. You could do markers, crayons. You can even cut a castle out and decorate it that way. I want to encourage you to have fun with it. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt mine down. Now, I've already drawn my castle with a pencil first because I feel that that's always smart to do and break it up into shapes. And let me pull it up a little bit here. On here, I don't know if you can see I've got the square in the middle, 2 rectangles on each side to make some towers. And I'm going to go ahead and go over those with a black crayon right now and talk about each shape. And if you would like, you can follow along with me, or you can just watch me do it and then draw your own style of castle if you want to make some changes. So I'm going to put this down here. The reason I'm using a black crayon today is because I'm going to use watercolor paints, and the crayon is made of wax, so wax resists water. So if I use a black crayon and I put paint on it, I know that the crayon will stay in place, that I can still see the outline, and it won't smear or anything. If I had used a marker and tried to put paint over it, if it was like a Crayola marker, it might run. So this is just a tip that makes it show up really nice. I'm going to start with the center because that's what I drew first. And I just decided to use a basic square for the main part of my castle. And then on each side, I wanted to add some towers. So I thought about another shape, which would be a rectangle, which is a square, but it's stretched out. It's longer, and 2 of its sides end up being longer than the other 2 sides. I'm going to do the other side. So I've got the main part of my castle and 2 towers. Now, for the tops of the towers, you can think about what you want to do. I decided to make mine just be triangles, like a cone-shaped tower at the top. Or on the top here, I also like to do how castles sometimes have little, it almost looks like zigzag, square type of a pattern along the top. If you'd rather do that on the towers, you can, or you can make triangles all the way around. You could even add another tower in the middle if you had room. Now, when you're doing your castle, try not to make it teeny, teeny, tiny on the paper. Try to fill your space because you've got a lot of space on here and you don't want it just to be all sky. I'm going to make an arch, it's like a hill, for the big door. Sometimes these are drawbridges, which means they come down for the people to come in and out, horses and people. And I'm going to make some lines on there just for some decoration. I could even make a big handle if I wanted. And then I'm going to add a window. Now these are some details that you can decide you might want to change the shape of them. I'm going to make some arched windows at the top of my towers, but I did a square window there. Again, it's up to you. And then I'm going to add a couple flags. I always feel like if I see a castle, there's a couple flags. So I'm going to go ahead and make 2 lines. And I'm just going to make my flags be triangles on the sides. So again, I'm just using shapes to make my castle. Finally, because I have a little room here at the bottom, you could do this if you want, or you could just have it be on grass. I'm going to make what's called a moat, which is kind of like a little river that goes all around the outside of a castle. I just thought this would be a fun addition. But again, you can do something a little different if you want. You don't have to do that at all. And then maybe I'll add this for the grass, and then my sky, of course. I'm going to make a few clouds. Even though I know I'm going to paint this in, I'll remember then I can keep it nice and white. So I went a little fast on this, but you can feel free to pause this if you want to draw right now or come back to it later. And now I'm ready to paint. And today I'm going to use watercolors, but they're a little bit different than the watercolors I've used with you before. I'll pull them over here a little bit to show you on my tray. These are watercolors that are already watery. You can see that. They're very concentrated. I have to add a little water to them. So they're already water instead of just solid where I had to wake them up and add some water before like we've done. Whatever kind of paint is fine. I chose these today because I like the bright colors that I had for these. And I wanted to, for my castle, to use more pinks and blues and purples. But that is it's whatever you have and what you prefer is fine. So I'm going to set that here. Now with my watercolor, I will be using water, a paintbrush, and paper towels to help dry it off in between. But again, if you don't have watercolor or paint at home, you can use your markers or crayons. Crayons always work really well to color the whole thing in. All right, I decided today, I know my sky is going to be blue, so I'm going to make my castle pink. Just feel like doing pink today, so I'm dipping it in my water colors, and very carefully, I'm going to paint my inside of my castle pink. Actually looks pretty red right now, but it's light. Now I could do my castle many different colors because I've got different parts to it. But I'm being real careful when I paint, if you are painting, by using the tippy toe of my brush here, and I'm not scrubbing it. I'm going in one direction very gently with my paint. And I am painting kind of upside down for me, but for you, you're looking at it the right way. I just didn't want you not to see mine going the right direction. So I'm real carefully taking my time and painting my castle. You'll have more time. Today, when you do your painting, though, I'd like you to include your sky, your ground, and try to fill any big empty spaces to make our castles look just beautiful. I'm going to pause this for just a moment and then show you when I'm almost finished painting so you can have some time to do your own project, okay? You saw this last, I went ahead and finished painting my castle. I added some purple for the tops of it, the roof, and then I added blue for my moat, which is the little river going around. Now for my sky, I wanted it to be a little lighter than the blue water. So remember with watercolors, if you just add more water to it, it'll be lighter. So this is the same color, but just a little bit more watery. Kind of a fun trip. In fact, I've got a lot of blue in my water right now. You can see that I really don't even need to add a whole lot of paint if I just want a light blue. Now, watercolor might drip and run a little bit, which I can see it is a little bit with my purple, and that's not a big deal. If you ever find that it's bothering you, you can take a little piece of tissue or paper towel and kind of gently touch on top of it, and it'll pull some of the paint off of it, some of the water in spots. Watercolor is supposed to be light anyway. You're supposed to be able to see through it a little. It's not going to be real thick paint. So you never want to go over it too much, because if you go over one space with water too much, you could get a hole in your paper, and you don't want that. You see where your paper might get a lot of little fuzzies on it almost, little dots of fuzz on your paper. It means you're probably using a little too much water, and you should stop painting in that area. Okay, so that's my really light blue. And then I'm going to do my green real quick to add some grass. But I do want you to think about the whole picture. And then, of course, I can add more detail. I cannot wait to see what your castles end up looking like.